now come back to surface area of a cylinder, and we're going to solve some more problems with the cylinder. So our next problem is going to be this one. Right, so I am going to solve this one both ways. It's not in your notes, and the reason I'm going to solve it both ways is some people might like the first formula, the non-rewrite one. In other words, they might like the 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. And others of you might like my rewrite, s equals 2 pi r times r plus h. So for everyone's benefit, I'll solve anytime I've got surface area, I'll solve it both ways, right? If it's in your notes, you just need to pick one and write it one way. All right, so we have the radius, we have the height. Our height is 8. All we need to do is plug in and simplify. So s is equal to 2 times pi times 4 squared plus 2 times pi times 4 times 8, which gives us s is equal to, make sure you square first, 2 times pi times 16. I just tend to rewrite this exactly as it is and just multiply all in one step each side, or each term, I guess. 2 times 16 would be 32 pi. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 8 is 64. And we're going to leave our answer in terms of pi. We just need to add those two together. So 96 pi units squared. All right, and let's do the same thing, but with the rewrite. So s is equal to 2 times pi times 4 plus 8. I'm going to add in the parentheses first. 2 times pi times 4 times 12. And now I'm just going to multiply the numbers together. 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 times 12 is 96. So 96 pi units squared. And I really do think that's, I mean, you can see there's a lot less red than there is blue. It is a little easier, I think, to use the second formula. But whichever you like better, that's the one you should use. Let's look at the next problem. Right? So find the lateral area and the surface area of the right cylinder. This one's in your notes. For some reason the direction to find the lateral area was not in mine, but I fixed it. And now after I just said you can use whichever formula you like better, I'm going to tell you that you really on this one should use the first formula. Right? You should use s equals 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. And the reason is we're looking for the lateral area as well as the surface area. The whole thing gives us the surface area. This portion gives us lateral area. So if we use the other formula, we're going to have to solve for lateral area separately. It seems to make more sense to just use the first formula and get both at the same time, right? Then do the problem twice. All right, so that's the first thing I want to say about this problem. The second thing I want to say is we don't know the height. Right? We do have we don't even have the radius, but we could easily get the radius, right? Our number of diameter, don't use diameter or your answer is definitely going to be wrong. Your diameter is equal to twice the radius. So if I divide the diameter in half, I get the radius, right? So the diameter divided by 2 is our radius, which means 16 divided by 2, which is 8, is the radius. Right, so now we have the radius. That was pretty easy. All right, now we need to find the height here. All right, so this is always going to be a right triangle that is made between your diameter, your height, and that diagonal, because this is a right cylinder. And right cylinders, the base and the height meet at right angles. So we need to use Pythagorean theorem to find that missing height. I am going to actually move this down a little bit because it makes more sense. Oops, come on. There we go. Makes more sense to do the steps in order, right? We'd have to find the height before we could find the surface area. All right, so finding the height. All right, so it's always going to be diameter squared plus height squared squared. Oops. waiting for my letters to pop up. There we go. So I can see where to put my square. All right, so our diameter is 16. 16 squared plus our height squared is equal to 34 squared. Right? So this does happen to be a Pythagorean triple. It's an 8, 15, 17 Pythagorean triple with everything multiplied by 2. But maybe you don't recognize that, or maybe you don't have your notes that have all those Pythagorean triples listed. Right? So if not, no worries. Just solve it out. All right, so 16 squared is 256 plus h squared is equal to, and I don't know 34 squared off the top of my head, 1156. I just know this is a Pythagorean triple. We're going to subtract 256 from both sides. H squared is equal to 900. Right, we just subtracted. And then if I take just the positive square root, because there's no such thing as negative measurement, h is going to be 30. So that's the height of our cylinder. Now we have everything we need. We can just find the surface area. All right, so, and the lateral area. So S is equal to 2 times pi times 8 squared plus 2 times pi times 8 times 30. All right, so let's square first. 2 times pi times 64 plus 2 times pi times 8 times 30. All right, so 2 times 64 is 128 pi. 2 times 8, actually I'm going to go in a different order. It's a little easier for me to, instead of 16 times 30, I think I want to do 30 times 8, because that's just 8 times 3 with another 0. And then just double it, multiply by 2. So 8 times 30 is 240, and then 240 times 2 is going to be 480. I think it's easier to multiply it that direction. So 480 pi, and now we just add those together, and that's going to give us 608 pi. So S is equal to 608 pi, and it's still going to have to be units squared because there's no units up there. All right, so this was a little bit longer problem. There's going to be a problem like this in your homework as well as a group work. But you just follow the steps. We just had to use Pythagorean theorem and divide our diameter in half to get the radius, and then we had everything we needed to, and this is about as difficult as these problems could get, to find the surface area. So really, cylinders, they're nice to work with. I think I've got maybe 4 more questions, 3 more questions. I think 3. We'll give 3. All right, we want to find the lateral area of the right cylinder. All right, so definitely don't want to use the first formula, the second formula, the rewrite, because that doesn't give us lateral area. And we don't actually want to use the whole surface area formula, right? Because we're not asked to find surface area. We just want lateral area. So remember, lateral area, right, is just the circumference, 2 pi r, times the height of the prism, right? That gives us this part there, not the bases. All right, so we have the radius, we have the height, we have everything we need. This is a nice easy one. And this one is in your notes. Yes, it is. So as well as the last one was 2 times pi times 7 times 12. We just have to multiply. Easy cheesy lemon squeezy. All right, so I'm going to multiply 7 times 12, because that's easier for me, and then doubling it rather than going the other direction. 12 times 7 is going to give us 84. And then 84 times 2 is going to be 168. Pi units squared. And that's it. We're done with this one. Another one done. All right, and there's no more in your notes, but there is one more problem. And this one is a trickier problem. We want to find the surface area of the right cylinder. So I have this one, and actually I think I have one more, this one here. This one's even a little bit harder. All right, and I'm going to solve both of those for you. If you feel free to add these to your notes, because there might be one in the homework like this one. All right, so we want to find the surface area of the right cylinder, and actually, very nice, it happens to give us the base area. This is actually an easy problem. So if you don't want to write this one in your notes, that's okay. This one's actually pretty easy. The next one's actually the trickier one. All right, so here, remember our surface area formula, and I want to use the first formula because it gives me base area. I want the one that separates the two because I already know half of my problem. So surface area, actually all I have to do is really find lateral area and add base area, and I've got surface area. All right, so it's 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h, but we already know this part. That's 36 pi. That was nice of them, right? So if, by the way, if the base area is 36 pi, what's the radius? Well, remember it's 2 pi, excuse me. Oh, oops. Actually, I just realized I'm glad I asked that question because I just realized something. They're just giving us one base. We still need the 2, right? So the 36 pi here is for the area of one base, right? And the area of a circle, remember, is pi r squared. So our radius, if we well, pi is already in there, right? So we already know that this is 36 pi. So 36 pi is pi r squared. If we divide by pi, we get 36, and then take a square root, right? Our radius is 6. So if you have a question like that, all you have to do is remember that's the formula for area. But I'm actually glad I decided to ask you that question because I almost forgot to write the 2. Right? So 2 times 36 pi plus 2 times pi, the radius. Oh, well, now I'm really glad we answered that question because I almost forgot we need the radius. I must be like thinking ahead without even realizing. My brain is just working so fast. We need the radius. Right? So if our base area is 30, you should probably put this one in your notes. Yes, this is an easy problem. However, there had several steps to it. I just kind of had to think about it. So we've got our base area for the surface area formula, but we need the radius for the lateral area portion. Right? But fortunately, the radius is really easy to find. Right? You just had to divide 36 pi by pi and then take a square root. The radius is 6. All right, so this is actually a pretty good one to put in your notes because I do think I have one that's like this in your homework. So 6 and 12. And now we can calculate out everything. All right, so our surface area is going to be 72 pi plus 2 times 6 gives us 12, and 12 times 12 is 144. So our surface area is 216 pi units squared. So on this one we had to do 2 things. So number 1, we had to find the radius using the base area. And then we had to substitute in the base area and the radius and height to find the lateral area. I'll just put LA. You know what that means. So this one had actually a couple steps. Right? So this one is good. Right? Let's solve one more problem. And I think this is a good one to add to your notes. I really should have put that in your notes because I have lots of pyramid problems. Maybe if I'd moved that pyramid problem down in your notes, I would have had more space. And I could have put this one. But you don't even really need the question to write the notes down. All right, so this one's a multiple choice, and I could have put this as a question on after the Nearpod, but I think we should work on this one together because it's a little bit different. This one's a little tougher, and you would want a calculator to solve this one because notice it's not in terms of pi, All right, so we're going to have to multiply or divide by pi, right, to get our answer here. But let's go through this problem. So we're looking for the height. Remember, there's only two dimensions. There's height and there's radius in terms of finding surface area. So we know one, we just need the other. Right? So really, it's not a difficult problem as much as it is you're going to have to, you can't just leave it in terms of pi, because our height, notice, is not in terms of pi. Right? And our surface area is not in terms of pi. All right, so now let's set up our equation. So S is equal to, on this problem, it probably does not matter which equation we use, the first or the second. Actually, let's see if one is easier than the other. All right, so let's solve it both ways. 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi rh, and that way you'll know, oops, missing a pi, for future problems, which one you liked. All right, so S here is 653.12 equals, and we know 2 pi, we know the radius, that's 8 squared, plus 2 times pi times 8 times h. Now I'm going to wait to do any calculations with pi until the very end. So I want to get everything in terms of just one pi, so I'm not dealing with a whole bunch of pi's and a whole bunch of decimals. So 653.12 is equal to, we got to square first. So we have 2 pi times 64 plus 2 times, let's just multiply, because it's just 2 times 8. So let's just write that as 16 pi h. And now we have to multiply the 2 and the 64 together. So 653.12 is equal to 128 pi plus 16 pi h. Well, actually, we can't combine anything because one of those has a variable. So we're going to have to subtract 128 pi from both sides. Right, and that's going to leave us with 16 pi h on one side. Oh, I really should have given myself more space. I was hoping these were connected. I'm just going to move my writing over the cylinder. All right, so now in the calculator, I am just going to subtract 128 pi. Right? If I use parentheses, it will do that correct. Actually, it should do that anyway because order of operations says multiply before you subtract. So it should multiply no matter what, parentheses or not, and then subtract, because your calculator knows order of operations. All right, so we have 653, so this is not one to do without a calculator, 0.12, and then subtract 128 pi. So I'm not going to multiply out 128 and then subtract. I'm just going to subtract 128 pi and let the calculator work with 128 pi, and it doesn't care. So I get 250.9961403. Right, that's almost 251. Matter of fact, unless I take it to 3 decimal places, actually, unless I take it to 4 decimal places, it's going to round up to 251. Let's just take 251. All right, so 251. Actually, probably isn't. Actually, it's not going to really matter because the calculator's going to do all the work. 200. So let's just take. We'll just keep the 3 decimals in there. It probably will not make a difference because look how nicely rounded those answers are on this multiple choice. 250.9961. So I'll write all the decimals because it's not like I'm working with them anyway. So divided by 16 pi is going to give us h. And the calculator says, and actually, I'm going to keep that whole value in there with all the decimals. So it's even more accurate. But I wrote down some of them. So 16 pi, and the calculator says, did I forget to do something? Because it gives me, oh, you know what? I know why. I didn't use parentheses. Now that parentheses really matters. It did not matter on the subtraction. And it didn't matter on the subtraction because order of operations, it's going to multiply, the calculator will multiply 128 times pi first and then subtract. However, on the division, it did not know that pi was supposed to be supposed to divide by pi 2. So it did order of operations. It did 120.9961 divided by 16, and then it multiplied by pi. And that's why my answer is ridiculous. So let's do this again. 250.9961. And this time I'm going to remember to use parentheses so that the calculator does the order I want it to, not necessarily order of operations, which would be multiply and division left to right. Now it's going to multiply first and then divide. So now I get a sensible answer. So it's 4.9934. Now we look at our answers here. They're in integer values, so let's round that up to 5, and 5 was our answer. Okay? Let's solve this one more time. This time, let's use the other formula and see which one was easier. All right, so we have 650, so remember it's S equals 2 pi r times r plus h. So 653.12 equals 2 times pi times 8. I don't know why I put parentheses there, I really didn't need to. And then 8 plus h. All right, so we need to simplify that a little bit. 653.12 equals 16 pi times 8 plus h. We could do one of two things. We could distribute. I'm going to do which I think is easier. I could distribute the 16 pi to the 8 and distribute the 16 pi to the h, and that essentially gives me this right here. Right? And it would be the same number of steps. Let's try not distributing, and let's just divide both sides by 16 pi, because that's going to, and then I'm not going to have any more pi's to deal with. And then I'll just have to subtract 8, and that'll give me my answer. So 653.12 divided by, and I have to remember to use parentheses so that it divides by 16 pi and not divide by 16 and multiply by pi. Oops, I accidentally put a wrong thing in here. Oh, I did it again. You know, the value right below the pi looks a lot like the pi. So I get 12.9934, etc., etc. All right, so I'll just write 12.993. Because we know we're going to round to the nearest integer anyhow, is equal to 8. And actually, I probably could have just written 13. You know, we may as well just write 13. Since this is multiple choice, and we know it has to be an integer, and it's so close to 13 equals 8 plus h, and now we just have to subtract 8 from both sides. So 5 equals h. I liked the second one. Right? If you divide by 16 pi and don't distribute. If you distribute, doesn't matter which one you use, it was all the same amount of work. And I don't know where this one, why do I have an extra? Oh, it belongs up here. There we go. All right, so this was the end of this was the last problem for cylinders. All right, so now we're going to, in the next podcast, we'll look at, matter of fact, the next lesson, it will be surface area of pyramids and cones. All right, bye for now.